Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is the story of a teenage girl, Kambili, growing up in Nigeria underneath a tyrannical father, strict Catholicism, and an untenable situation. Let's talk about Purple Hibiscus. Of course, it's going to be amazing. The book opens with Kambili's brother Jaja rebelling against his father, which they call Papa in the book. It then takes us back to before Palm Sunday, when the rebellion happened, and then shows us what happened after. We quickly learn that Papa is not your normal, strict father. He is downright abusive. He has his entire household silenced by his tyrannical behavior. And that brings us to the first theme I want to talk about in this book, which is the theme of voice. Our main character and narrator, Kambili, has a stutter. She struggles to speak. Also, throughout the family, there is a silent language where no one talks about the abuse, but in a look or a glance, they understand what's going on with one another. When their mother miscarries, they understand it was because of a beating. When the brother Jaja is rushed to the hospital with a mangled hand, they understand it was a punishment from Papa. Voice is also explored in other characters, as Kambili is entranced by Father Amadi's deep voice. Papa uses his voice throughout this book, not only in shouting and threatening his family, but also in his work. He's the owner of a newspaper that is critical of the government. There's also this essence of voice in the more Catholic scenes of the book through prayer and confession. There are also multiple stories told throughout this book, or should I say different perspectives. Kambili sees the perspective her father, Papa, gives her on many issues, especially the issue of her heathen grandfather. And to contrast, she also has the story of her auntie Ifeoma, who gives her another perspective on their grandfather. This harkens back to the TED Talk that the author gave about 10 years ago called The Danger of a Single Story, for which she is quite well known. She gave that talk after writing this book, but many people have drawn parallels. The author strives to give the world a different story of Africa. For example, this book tells the story of a very wealthy family in Africa. So we have two stories being told in this book as well. We have Papa's story, the only opinion acceptable in his household. And we have Auntie Ifeoma's story. Auntie Ifeoma, the cultivator of the purple hibiscus. Papa says that to even spend time, to sleep in the same roof, to eat food with a heathen will bring upon you hellfire. Auntie Ifeoma has a story of love and acceptance for many people, a perspective of a God that is loving and forgiving. Jaja and Kambili have to navigate these two stories as they encounter them. Another theme you'll find is judgment. Obviously, Papa is very judgmental of everyone around him. You will not believe the amount of hellfire he has called down on others. Much of the judgment centers around the grandfather character, Papa Nuku. He is a traditionalist, and the Catholics around him have various judgments of him. Papa's priest, Father Benedict, shares Papa's strict views and accepts Kambili's confession that she spent more than 15 minutes in Papa's house this year and prescribes a penance for her. On the other hand, the priest out in the country, Father Amadi, thinks it is silly that it would be a crime to spend time with your grandfather no matter what religion he is. There's also the judgment that we as readers bring to the book. I was intrigued throughout reading this book about this question of, is Papa a good man or a bad man? On one hand, He is obviously physically abusive, tyrannical, judgmental, prideful, absolutely horrible. And so you might think, how can I be even asking this question? But on the other hand, he is brave. He is brave in his defiance of the dictatorial government. He is standing up against this oppressive government, even though it puts his own life in danger, not to mention his material possessions, which he has many. Another point in favor of Papa is that he really truly strives to be the person that he believes God wants him to be. Does it temper his abuse if he truly believes that he's punishing them out of love for them? Is he being strict because he really believes that without punishment, they will endure God's punishment of hellfire? Is he not an image of the very God that they worship? And we see this sincerely held belief that his abuse is necessary to save the souls of his family in his remorse that he expresses so deeply after he has injured one of his children. So that brings us to another theme, is this theme of remorse. Papa's not the only one who feels remorse. Kamberly is plagued by guilt and remorse and fear of sin, fear of Papa. She's always second-guessing herself. Jaja, on the other hand, we don't understand his inner thoughts because he's not our narrator. But he appears to have a lack of remorse, that when he challenges Papa, he does so sternly and confidently almost. He does not apologize. He does not go to confession that we know of. We also see this theme of remorse in Mama's character, which we haven't really talked about much yet. But, and spoiler alert, Mama poisons Papa at the end of the book. And you are left to interpret her remorse as well as choose to or choose not to judge her for that choice of killing her husband. Mama was in an untenable situation. She was allowing herself to be abused, her children to be abused, and yet to leave him seemed unthinkable. To be thrown into poverty, and perhaps her children, in a time of political unrest, in a country where people starve regularly. The main symbol of Mama's situation are the porcelain figurines on the étagère. Every time she is beaten, she reacts by going and dusting or polishing these figurines. When Jaja decides to defy Papa in the first scene of the book on Palm Sunday, Papa throws a missile and breaks the figurines. And it is somewhere around that time, we know, that Mama purchases the poison with which she kills her husband. Those figurines symbolized her coping with the abuse, and Jaja's defiance, his acceptance that he was a man enough to stand up against the wrongs of his father and was willing to step away, I think gave Mama the courage to not have to replace those figurines. She had a new strategy for coping with the abuse. Finally, let's talk about the symbol of the purple hibiscus, for which the book is titled. Purple is not a natural color for this flower, and one of Auntie Ifeoma's friends has cultivated this for her, and Auntie Ifeoma has it in her garden. It is Kamberly and Jaja's experience in Auntie Ifeoma's home that helps them to grow and change, gives them a different perspective other than their father's. So it is very easy to see that this flower represents this awakening in the characters, this realization that there is a different life, a different opinion, a different story to tell other than their father's. Adichie gives us her own interpretation of her symbol, the purple hibiscus. I lay in bed after Mama left and let my mind rake through the past through the years when Jaja and Mama and I spoke more with our spirits than with our lips. Until Nusuka started it all. Auntie Ifeoma's little garden next to the veranda on her flat in Nusuka began to lift the silence. Jaja's defiance seemed to me now like Auntie Ifeoma's experimental purple hibiscus. Rare, fragrant with the undertones of freedom. A different kind of freedom from the one the crowds waving green leaves chanted at Government Square after the coup. A freedom to be, to do. Thank you so much for watching this discussion on Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. If you liked this video, please click like, subscribe, and share it. I know a lot of people are starting to read this in their high school literature classes, and I hope that if that's you, that this video has helped you digest the book a little bit. If you have not read Purple Hibiscus, I hope I did not spoil it for you. It is an amazing work of literature. Pick up a copy. Even though you know the ending now, it is worth the read.